Hey, welcome to Graphic Policy Television, GPTV. I'm Brett. I'm here with Phillip Kennedy Johnson. We're here to talk his indie career, Marvel, DC, the man who is going to launch Alien for Marvel. He's going to be flying up in the sky with Superman. He's going to be taking us into the future with DC Future State and Superman. Just tons of stuff to come. And, you know, I've known him for years, so I'm super excited. It's like one of the nicest guys in the comic history, and just awesome to see such success and be able to do like such huge properties. I'll admit I'm a little jealous over Alien. So welcome. I actually don't think we've ever done an interview, like a formal interview. So I'm really psyched about this.
Yeah, dude. It's good to see you in the middle of, as the ashes of America fall upon us. Nice to see you in some kind of capacity.
It's not Ash, it's DC and the DMV, dude.
Right.
It's snow. I know we don't get it often, but here you go.
Is that what that is? I guess we'll see.
So I want to start off. You had a recent release with Kill a Man that came out through AfterShock. You worked on that with Steve Orlando, was your co-writer. Really good series. Also in it was we got Steve Orlando, Alan Morgan, and Jim Campbell were the other creators that were part of it.
That's right.
And so the series, for those who are the graphic novel, for those who don't know, it's takes place in MMA. It's about a fighter who gets outed by a potential opponent. His crew abandons him. His sponsors abandon him. The promotion abandons him. And the way I described it was very much like a Rocky flow as far as the story, dealing with an LGBT main character, kind of dealing with his own stuff as well. So I just want to talk about the series. Like you're clearly an MMA fan. So how did you get to writing this with Steve Orlando, who I think is an MMA fan? I know he's posted like wrestling stuff and
Right.
some MMA stuff, but like how did the series come about and go from there?
Yeah. So, I mean, publicly, Steve is always talking about wrestling. He's a huge wrestling guy for sure. But I first got to know Steve. I mean, we did a panel together, like a boom panel years ago, but it was one of those things where, it was like, 6 or 7 of us. I didn't actually talk to Steve. He had to bail at the very end of the panel, and we didn't even talk. But then the following year, I think I got invited. Like Ron Morris is a mutual friend of ours. Ron had a huge hand to help me get into the business. And he and Steve were both kind of from upstate New York. And Ron had been talking up Albany Con forever, and I'd never done it. And honestly, had not tabled on my own that much. Usually I was doing stuff with Boom at the time. And I ended up going up to Albany Con, and they had kind of a spread for us at the hotel. And Steve, being Steve, was like, "This spread's not good enough. These chicken wings suck. I know a better place." He went to school up there, so he found another, like this hole in the wall, like a sports bar type place that had like legit wings. It's like, let's go to this other place. And so we went to this other bar, and they had a fight on. And we just bought like hundreds of wings and all ate them and hung out. And that's when I found out that Steve was becoming an MMA fan. And I was practicing MMA at the time and really loved it. And Steve was learning to love it. And we just talked about fighters and kind of just bonded over it. And so whenever there was another con that we were both at, we sort of hung out and talked about stuff. He was, Mr. Big Shit, and I was still doing little indie books, and he was introduced me to a lot of people. And we just, at some point, he started talking about this idea for a book that he had. He'd been very inspired by the movie Creed, and that kind of percolated with his love of MMA and the story of oh my God, I'm blanking on his name. One of the greatest boxers of all time, Emil Griffith, who was I believe, bisexual boxer, like back in the day, like in the 60s. He's one of the legit best boxers ever. And he killed a guy in the ring. He got a guy like slapped him on the ass and like said something really, like made a slur to him about his sexuality, and he took it real personal, and he ended up beating him so bad in the ring that he died of his wounds. And they made a documentary about that guy and about that event. That really affected him a lot. It arguably affected his boxing style after that even. So anyway, that was a famously documented thing that happened. And at some point, Steve had found out about it. He watched the documentary, I think. And so this idea for this MMA fighter, like second generation MMA fighter that gets outed in the ring, kind of came together in his head. the time, this is a very vague idea that he wanted to explore, but he wanted somebody with a really deep background in MMA to co-write it with him, and we had become friends, and it sort of made sense. So
it's interesting in the graphic novel, the review, I was really impressed with it in that it did a good dance around being technical and showing that they're like, you guys knew what you're talking about when it came to MMA, but at the same time not going over the top with technical stuff. So there was like just enough for like people who know MMA to sit there and be like, all right, these people know their topic and then they clearly know the ring. But it's also really friendly with new readers, and that you don't have to know what, a cross arm bar is, or, guillotine choke or anything like that. So, when you're coming with things, was that on your mind? Because that really does stand out to me as like a really, really key thing of the graphic novel.
Thanks. I'm glad to hear that, because it was something that came up in our co-writing. I haven't co-written that many things. I did co-write Power of the Dark Crystal with Cy Spurrier, but it was a different sort of thing where Cy basically did essentially wrote the breakdowns, and then I scripted it, and then we would kind of go back and forth a little bit. But in this book, it was much more involved with both of us from the very beginning. Steve, basically we both took big chunks of script that we took the lead on, that we would do the first pass on, and then the other person, and then we would just switch roles. We would okay, so on the fight stuff, anything where it's a fight happening in the cage, or behind the scenes business stuff with the EFC organization, or anything that's very fight heavy, I would take the lead on those things. And the relationship things that were very personal to Steve, between the main character and the guy he's with or his family, those kind of things, he took all the lead on that. And then we would just switch sections and kind of homogenize the language, essentially, to make sure it felt like one voice. And Steve would tend to get a bit in the weeds with some of the insider baseball, like LGBTQ, the way, that whole culture, the subculture of the dating scene and all that. Sometimes it got a little bit, I got a little bit lost, or sometimes it would get kind of uncomfortable as someone who's not actually part of it.
Yeah.
And he would in turn read the fight stuff, be like, you're getting way too into this regarding the technicality of fighting. And then we would just kind of make sure that the book remained, accessible to people who were coming at it from the other side, because we wanted legit fight fans or fighters to read it and see that this is for them. But we wanted LGBTQ people to see that this is their voice as well. And so we were just constantly trying to make sure it was for everyone,
And someone who's not LGBTQ, I got that vibe off of it. There was a couple scenes, and there was one, I think it was when he was talking about his first time with a guy. And I was like, Steve wrote this. Steve absolutely wrote this scene, because they're I know you. I don't see Philip knowing this experience to be able to talk about this. This is someone who has experienced this or knows this world and has been around this stuff. So I read that and I was like, all right, this is very much Steve there. And it's funny is that was also across my mind, is I thought it was fascinating as a graphic novel, is that you can come from an LGBTQ experience and read it one way and appreciate it on that, or you can come at it as a fighter and it's just a gay fighter, and the hurdle he has to go over is being outed and all that. It's really, and both of it is just entwined in that classic, sports kind of, flow of its story. I mean, it is really not in the flow, not too different than Creed or Rocky or any of that stuff. So it's familiar in that. I just thought it was really, really fascinating. The fact that you just said that, I'm like, oh, yep, nailed it. Okay, so my reading was very, very good on that.
Good. Glad to hear that. Yeah, it's that scene you're talking about. I know the one you mean, and I got to send you that first draft.
I'd actually like to see it. It's funny because I read it, and he uses some language and I forgot what it was, and I'm just like, that is a very clearly inside LGBTQ wording.
Mm-hmm.
And I forgot what it is, and I wish I had my copy with me, because I'd go try to figure it out.
He uses the word bussy in it.
Yes, that's it. And I was like, I have no idea what the hell this is.
Yeah, you kind of okay, I guess. Yeah, when I read it, I was like, yikes! But that was not remotely the worst thing in that scene the first time. Where I was like, dude, we got to walk this back some. It's just getting. It can't be a how-to manual, it's. I want them to see that it's for them, but as well as this other crew, but it's getting a little too much. And because I don't want people. Okay, I remember reading the Laurel K. Hamilton book. At some point, I fell into Laurel Hamilton's series. I forget the name of the character, but it's like a female detective in a world where, like, the undead receive, like, the Supreme Court in the United States gives the undead civil rights in the U.S. And so people flock to, like, vampires and werewolves and whatever, flock to the U.S. from other countries for, like, sanctuary, essentially. And there's this detective who is in like an undead, division of law enforcement in St. Louis or something. And I forget the name of the character, but they made a Marvel comic out of it. Actually, it was like this, like, hot dark-haired detective who has these little, flings with vampires or whatever. And it was a cool enough concept and was written very well. And it became like this kind of fluff series that I was really enjoying for a while. But when it got into the sex part to a certain degree, I was like, okay, like, the whole time I knew, like, this kind of isn't for me. I know I'm not the target demographic here, but it's cool and I'm digging it. And there was a point where I was like, I think I'm done. And I had to just kind of put it away. I was like, this is definitely not for me now. And that was the moment I was trying to pull us back from all the time. Like, I didn't want there to be a moment where, the fight, because I know there's going to be a lot of dude bros reading this book that love fighting, but are kind of getting their eyes opened to gay culture. And that's what we wanted to do. We wanted to take some risks and, expose people to the other side of this whole thing. It was supposed to be a kind of a dangerous read, but I didn't want to just blatantly push people away. So, and Steve felt the same way about the fight stuff. He was like, yeah, I just feel like you're talking to other fighters and no one else.
Yeah, well, it's good is that the arc that it is. I mean, even though it's LGBT, like, you can still relate to it. Straight people can still relate to it. Being rejected by your parents and everyone else for some reason. Like, it's not something that's only that. It's just that's a very specific reason and experience. So even like the way it's presented, like, there's still things for straight guys to connect to in some way. Like, we've all been rejected by groups or whatever. Family, however. So I mean, it's really interesting. I think you guys did an amazing balance of it, and, like, I highly recommend it. I've told so many people, like, the local shop was debating on doing I think an LGBT book night on it, and I was like, no, you got to do it. Like, you really got to do it. I think it's a great
awesome.
balance. And I've been talking it up to my MMA friends, and they're like, no, yeah, you'll check it out. Like, you really need to check it out and read it. Again, does a great balance of the fighting and the story and all that. Like, I'm like, it's Rocky. Go into it thinking about, like, Rocky and those storylines, and you're totally fine. Like, that's really what they're going with. But yeah, I mean, is there a chance of seeing more in that series? Because it was really freaking good.
Thanks.
As an MMA fan, I really liked it. Clearly.
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, there's been some development talk. It just depends on where it goes from here, Like, it's, for the time being, we're both pretty busy with other stuff, but I would love to come back to it. And I mean, if fans respond really well, and if they want to see more, I would always be open to doing more, because I love the characters, and yeah, I'd totally be down.
It's interesting is that it's a sport in, like, a world that hasn't really been explored too much in comics. It's really,
yeah, agreed.
We see there's tons of wrestling comics. That's something that's been pretty consistent in some way or another for a really long time. MMA, there was the one UFC comic that actually they gave out at an event, and then
I didn't know about that one. There's like
a
UFC branded book.
Yeah, so it was one of the Action Lab guys did it, and I can't think of who it was. I actually have a copy of it that I picked up, I think, at San Diego last year, or no, 2 years ago, whatever.
That's cool.
No, last year I think it was. Yeah, they did like a branded UFC comic that they handed out at some event. I forgot which one. So in theory, there should be like 20 or whatever 30,000 copies of it out there.
Yeah.
And I haven't read it. Like, it's one I always been like, I really need to read this, and I never have. And then there was one that I'm totally blanking on her name, that was on G4 did.
Hart.
Yeah. I actually have some of the original art for that.
What's that?
I actually have some of the original art for that.
Oh my God, really?
Yeah. There's a double page spread where he's, I think, in his office, and then in the gym or in the locker room afterwards, and he's kind of like looking at himself sitting down. Like, I've got that spread, and I think I have maybe one other page from it. But yeah, like, it was pretty awesome. It's a great series. Like,
I was a big fan of Blair Butler when she was doing her stuff, and that book turned out great, man. That was a really fun series. That's the last time I saw a legit MMA book on the shelf.
Yeah, and I think
sometimes you'll see stuff like you'll go to a convention and see like little like self-published things, like a whatever MMA horror mashup thing.
Yeah.
But it's not really anything else on shelves that you can get with MMA, and should be more, I think.
Yeah, it's a fascinating one. Like, as I said, like wrestling, Boom obviously has the license of that, and there's tons of just spin-off stuff. But like MMA is just one that never has clicked for a whole lot, which has been it's weird because it's a huge audience and you think they would be down for it.
Yeah.
But Killaman, you should go check that out. That's the short. Leading into all this, Killaman is freaking awesome for those who are watching this for the first time, if not heard of it. But the big news is like you've just had announcement after announcement after announcement in the last couple weeks. So let's go over. There's obviously DC Future State. You're going to be handling Superman for that. So that is January and February.
Yep.
From that, you're spinning off into Superman and Action Comics March.
Mm-hmm.
You also have Alien coming out in March as well.
Yeah.
And March is Phillip month, apparently. So I don't know. We'll start with Alien because Alien is pretty much an open and shut conversation. DC is, I think, a really fascinating since you're also doing Last God with them as well. So Alien, like how the hell did that guy? You were doing Marvel Zombies Resurrection for Marvel. I'm assuming that's what led into Alien.
Yeah, I mean, it seemed to be. It's honestly, dude, I saw the announcement that Marvel had picked up the Alien and Predator licenses with everyone else. I saw the David Finch like covers that he did with like Predator, like Iron Man's head hanging out, and the Alien cover. Those are so rad. And when I saw those, I was so pumped. It's like, oh my god, I can't wait to see this shit. And I I reached out, and I never do this, but I reached out to my editor on Resurrection, and I was like, give me this book. I mean, I assumed that they already had a creative team lined up for that by that point.
I would think so too, right? Like as soon as you have that license, you think they would be hitting people up immediately.
Yeah. I mean, they already had covers, so I was like, surely they've already got a team lined up, even if there's nothing done yet. But I was like, well, maybe they'll, as you know, Marvel tends to, like when something hits really hard and people really react to it, they tend to kind of flood the market with more of that stuff. If suddenly everyone loved Deadpool, so we're just going to Deadpool the crap out of you. I assumed there would be more things coming out of it the way they did Conan, like there were other spin-off series. I was like, please put me on the Alien thing. Like I am the biggest fan you've ever heard of for this stuff. And he actually responded to, he's like, yeah, I can see that being a really good fit. Now, supposedly there were also people pulling for me to get that series already behind the scenes before I even called about that. So I don't know how the conversations happened, like what, who called who in what order or anything, but I know Marvel Zombies was a really great experience for all of us. Except for the scheduling stuff that nobody could help, like, because it was supposed to come out, they were going to put them out weekly, I think initially in April, like issues 1, 2, 3, 4 all at once. And then COVID happened, and the first page of that was like New York City in terror, like when everything was going down with COVID in New York. So when they froze a lot of their titles, Zombies was one of those. But as far as the how the book turned out and the creative process, everyone's very happy with it. I'm super proud of that series.
So what's funny is that like Zombies are supposed to come out in April, when I would sit there and be like, no, you kind of wanted to hit it around Halloween, right? Like to me, that's a very seasonal.
Right.
Book.
Well, that's when you put out the Prelude. The Prelude came out Halloween Eve.
Yeah, and the series eventually came out right around Halloween. Like it
right.
wasn't perfect, but it did come out about that. So I actually, as a reader, it actually felt intentional. Of like this is when it should be coming out. So that, like it being delayed and supposed to come out earlier didn't even cross my mind at any point.
Cool. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, because it felt appropriate. Like it's a zombie story. Halloween is the time of year. Like maybe time it so the trade comes out on Halloween, but like something should be coming out on Halloween.
Right.
So it's really good. But so the interesting is like when you got announced for Alien, immediately I thought of as like, all right, so you did the zombies, which shows you can do horror, and Alien is sci-fi horror to me. But you also have a military background too, which fits perfectly in that world. Reading kind of the tease about it is that you're focusing on a mercenary in the story and this all new character. I think it's an all new character. I gotta imagine you're using some of your background to like go into that series. Like, I expect there'd be maybe some touches on things that maybe someone knows the military would know that someone who isn't in the military wouldn't know.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I love those first. Honestly, I know a lot of people crap on the third movie. I like the third movie, but the first two are. I mean, everyone knows the first two movies are like where it's at. You know,
I'm
like,
with you on the third film. I think it's an underrated one.
yeah. I mean, I hate that the characters, like the extra characters, got killed for basically no reason. But that aside, I thought there was a lot of really great ideas in it.
Yeah.
The first two though are obviously like amazing, and
Yeah.
this series relies very heavily on those first two films. There's a couple of big tie-ins to the second movie in particular, but also just the vibe of it. Like I love that first movie, that where it was, you got construction workers in space trapped on the ship with this thing that you don't ever really, or not, well, you do, but you don't openly see, and it's picking them off one by one. It's just this claustrophobic, awesome sci-fi horror thing. And I love the idea there being just one. And then on the next one, you're in the nest, and it's like this big, you got these badass characters, and it's more of like a shootout in the nest, and it's such a different genre, but so well executed, and it builds on that lore so well. There's aspects of both that I really wanted in this. I didn't want to just, so many of the Dark Horse books just really tried to kind of recreate the Space Marine versus alien thing.
Yep.
To mixed results. Like some of them were great, some of them were less great, some of them also kind of lean on the first movie, but I wanted something that had that same claustrophobia kind of, but also lean into the cool aspects of the badass against the alien. And so I've got this new protagonist that kind of skirts that line. So if I had to pick one movie, I guess I'd still go with the first one. I love that first movie, and I really wanted to see it. So we've got that same kind of setup, but it definitely is a lot of military stuff in it as well. Instead of actual space marines, like colonial marines, like you see in the film, you're seeing another side of that, where you're seeing like defense contractors that are. It explores the Weyland-Yutani spin, where it's not they're a corporation like Exxon or something that's so big, it's really like its own sovereign nation kind of. It becomes like on par, like who's more powerful, the United States at that point or Weyland-Yutani.
I don't know how much of the discussions you're part of. So it's been interesting in Marvel with Star Wars, in that they have added so much to the universe in their comics. They've really added depth to it, and it feels like there's probably some good coordination going on between Disney and Marvel talking about Star Wars. One is, are you part of those conversations with Disney and Alien, just because they picked up the property? There's a TV show being worked on at FX. There's the role-playing game that's out from oh my God, I'm totally blanking on the name. I have it like sitting on next to me, and I'm blanking on the name. There's a role-playing game coming out, and that's got stories and world being built on there. Like with Star Wars, they seem very coordinated on everything, and I know Alien's still fairly new for the company, so I don't know if that coordination's there. So one is that coordination's there, and the other is like for you as a creator, like what are you allowed to do? Like how much world building are you allowed to do, and do you have not really mandates, but have you been talked to about tying into previous films? And I know there's maybe a new Prometheus being worked on and all that. Like I think, to me as a fan, I'm always fascinated about like what creators are kind of dictated to or not to when it comes to that sort of stuff.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of coordination happening. The 20th Century is very involved in what we're doing. I mean, not involved in a shitty way. Like yeah,
and it's not a negative thing. Like coordination's a good thing. Like to be able to get
I don't mean they're pulling my strings. I did have one other licensed book a long time ago that was less positive, where they were like the licensor, they were kind of new to the whole thing, and like they were very controlling, and it was just kind of a drag. That's not been the case here. People who know what they're doing will look at it at 20th Century, and then I'll get like a note or two back. So they're seeing everything that we're doing, and they've been very supportive, and like so far have not had very much pushback on anything. There was one fun moment where I described a moment that kind of an alien grossness moment where I can't give it too much away, but something that we haven't actually seen on screen in a film yet.
Okay.
And I got a note like, this isn't really how the xenomorph works. And I was like, actually, if you refer back to Covenant and the special feature, if you read all of David's notes, you will find this scene. And so it's funny. It's kind of fun to go back and forth and like just sort of have the gunslinger moment where like who knows more about Ridley Scott stuff. But yeah, it's been really fun actually coordinating with them, and they've been really great so far. I know everyone's super busy with everything, so everyone's scrambling. At 20th Century and Marvel, everyone's doing so much, so it's all just a matter of getting notes back in a timely fashion. But they've been really good, and I really, really, really want this book to belong in Alien canon like forever, and that's part of why I didn't want to deal too much with Alien 3, because and to be clear, I don't know about this is absolutely my own thoughts, but I know a lot of people, there are enough people out there who are still pissed about Hicks and Newton getting killed.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's still a possibility that at some point that stuff could get retconned. And if that happens, I still want our book to belong. So I'm not building anything on that particular sandbar, like I'm relying more on the first two films that we all know will always be there.
Do you know, and I'm not trying to put it on the spot because they haven't really announced it at all. Do you like know where the Dark Horse stuff stands?
That's another thing I really wanted to leave alone, because we were pulling a lot of triggers very quickly when we first got the call to do the Alien book. I would imagine that most of that stuff is going to get jettisoned. I think they have not said that. However, that's a complete speculation on my part.
I mean, in the end, that's interesting. Is a lot of the Dark Horse stuff kind of stood on its own. Like, yeah, they weave together a little bit, but most of the stuff you could just read, and it was just stories. It's part of the universe and events that happen. Like, unlike Star Wars, I think the way Alien was set up was it felt more standalone stories where you can just hop in, enjoy, and it's not whatever 800 years of pretty laid out history.
Right.
So in that way, like I can also see it just being left and being like, yeah, some of it is, some of it's not. Like we just don't need to address it at all. But I was just wondering, like, if that's come up at all, because a lot of it, like, at least the stuff I've read, like, the only thing that really tied it into anything was maybe a mention of Weyland-Yutani and the Alien or the Predator.
Yeah,
and like that was it.
Exactly. There's all this crazy stuff. I'm certain there's certain, like you said, it's a very modular approach where it's just like a one and done arc, and then it's over, and the next one has nothing to do with it. And it's there'll be little tie-ins, like you'll see some familiar guns or armor or something from the second one, or the name Weyland-Yutani gets thrown around, but very little connection. And for that reason, I feel like a lot of that stuff is going to go away. Plus, I mean, after so many of those arcs came out, people got real creative with some things, and some of those things now, compared to the films, pretty nuts. Like I don't think I forget which one it was, but the one with the talking android xenomorph that speaks English, like there's just some really weird stuff that just feels so not of the films.
Yeah.
And honestly, I kind of put Resurrection in that same boat. Like I thought, I don't like that film much. And it also feels kind of like with the more humanoid alien that came out late. I don't know. It just feels so wild compared to the grounded approach to those first three movies and with the ones that have come out since then.
Yeah. I mean, there's also like those first two films, the second was more action. Like they're still really grounded in the horror aspect of it. And there was a point where it shifted to sci-fi for a lot of it too, where it just kind of forgot the horror, and it was just watch them go out and blast some stuff and deal with it. Like the Predator wound up being very similar in that, is like, hey, it's just a group of people shooting it just because it became a slasher film with a bunch of big guns, as opposed to like Predator was kind of that horror aspect as well. Like you didn't see him for quite a long time into the film. So, and the other would be is like when Marvel announced Alien, they also mentioned Predator. So obviously they're working on something with Predator. I mean, I'm going to guess whatever's going on, maybe you're coordinating, or at least maybe you know something of what's going on. Not having you do specifics, but
yeah, I know very honestly, I don't know too much, and I can't talk about what I do know, but God, what can I even say about that? I mean, I know there are things happening, but I can't really say much about it. I'm not. I definitely have a full plate. I'm definitely not writing that book. I can say that.
Well, I'm just excited by it. Like I think Marvel's done such a good job with Star Wars, in that they have added depth to the series in the universe without really jacking with stuff. Like it's part of it, and I'm really hoping we see similar with Alien and Predator, because I think there's such potential with that.
I think we will. I mean, that's the approach I'm taking. For example, I mean, we've got an Obi-Wan Kenobi show coming with Darth Vader in it. And there's nothing in the films that says Obi-Wan and Darth Vader never met again. And the fact that that Hayden Christensen is in it, I mean, it seems unnecessary for him to be in that unless there's either flashbacks. I mean, I guess it's possible we could see him like chopped up out of the armor, but it's also possible a lot of it could just be flashback stuff. So I don't know. But anyway, there's nothing that said they never met again after episode 3. The same way that in the books you see Luke and Darth Vader go face to face after the events of episode 4. That is also never really expressly said. It didn't happen. You just kind of assume it. So they find all these clever ways, like, Han having been married before, and these things that just add to the lore without breaking anything in the movies. I think that's a really important way to do it, and keeping the quality super high, making sure it ties in with Lucasfilm. That's kind of the approach we're doing. I've got a story coming that ties directly into those first 2 movies that would very easily be considered canon, that feels of those movies. Like if you could watch those first 2 movies and read the book and then go on to Prometheus and Covenant and feel like you've not seen anything out of place. And that's important, I think, especially since it's the first arc. And we might get into a much more creative place eventually, but I didn't want to go guns blazing right out, like boom, flying xenomorphs or whatever, like right out of the gate. We can get there maybe, but certainly not yet.
Yeah, and it's such a big space to go play with. I mean, really, when it comes down to it, like, you can play with anything with Alien. It seems like one of the very few things that it kind of ties a lot of together is the Weyland-Yutani Corporation. It seems to be their big empire that, like, really kind of is their, bad guy that flows through everything. They're emperor in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Which I think is fascinating. Like, it's just a very, like, you can do any story, and you can just have this, like, little hints about the corporation here and there, which would be really, really interesting, other than, it having aliens or Predator. So I was like, how much of the series do you have, like, are you working on? I mean, they just said Alien #1, wasn't mentioned of anything about being a miniseries or anything like that. So, I mean, can you talk about, how far you're going out?
I probably shouldn't commit to that, but I will say that I hope to be on this book a very long time.
All right. Cool.
That said, what you were saying about Weyland-Yutani, I totally agree. I love that there are all these little subplots happening that become through lines from movie to movie. Like, you get to see the development of the androids, which is super important.
Yep.
I love, like, that's one aspect of Resurrection I liked a lot, actually. I liked how the Winona Ryder character, how, like, spoilers for anyone who's not seen this stuff. You see the androids become more developed, but also more independent and more free thinking and more like humans, and or even better than humans. And then we see, of course, David is hugely important.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, the plots that you see, plots or just, like, even just visual development things, like you see the development of the xenomorphs themselves. Like in the first one we see the Xeno, and the next one we see the Queen, and then Alien 3 we see the dog one or the ox one, depending on which version you watched. And then it gets into Crazy Town that I'd like for to just forget about. And then, of course, Prometheus gets into really interesting stuff with the goo and everything. So I'd love to see the development of the xenomorph, like, very slow trajectory build in a way that makes sense and feels true, while also exploring the fact that they are this incredibly versatile thing that can entwine itself with any DNA. Like, it can bond with a worm or with a snake or a dog or a person or whatever and become this amazing thing. That's why it survives anywhere. So that's one through line that I want to show. The Weyland-Yutani thing, I'd love to see how that company builds and becomes, like, its own empire, like you say, like it's its own government, basically. I love that idea. The android thing, seeing how they develop and how they become their own thing and how they interact with humanity, and the whole idea of humans creating their own form of life while also trying to harness the power of the xenomorph is so much you can do with that. I just love that whole idea.
I always thought the thing that, I mean, they hint at it a lot, but I would always love to seen it play out way more. And I think it did in the Dark Horse stuff, was the Weyland-Yutani using the xenomorph as a weapon.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, that's their goal in the second film, right? Is to capture it and weaponize it.
Right. Yeah, and you see that explored for sure. You see how far they're willing to go to get it in the third one. Then the fourth one, they totally are doing it, basically. Like, they're growing their own. Yeah. So yeah, I definitely want to explore that, but not beat it over the head, because that's what everyone assumes you're doing. Like everyone assumes, oh, they're just trying to weaponize it, and that's definitely the case. But I've been trying to kill myself thinking about what else can you do? Like what other opportunities are there besides just weaponization? What besides just bioweapons?
Well, the interest is the bioweapon of like against what? They never say what. They never really never say what they need the bioweapon for, right?
Well, yeah, I assume. I mean, I always assume it's just, well, okay, there's growth for growth's sake, which is what we see from all companies. But then there's
Right.
also, it's become. I remember reading something sometime about a meeting that was seen between, I want to say, W. Bush and the head of Exxon at the time, and it was like a meeting between two heads of state, like peers.
Yep.
It's not, someone walking in talking to the president like the other guy, and not like the big guy. And that really stuck with me, and how it's these companies have become so big in some cases that they they and governments need each other, not nobody's subservient to anyone else. We could see a company get so big that it really is the dominant power, and that's kind of what I want to explore. I want to see Will and Yutani almost in like this weird struggle with just the concept of global government, and sort of like overshadowing them in some way, and where like it's become like this Cold War between government and Whale and Yutani. I think it's a super interesting idea, and something I want to kind of play with.
Yeah, I mean, it's always so it's the funniest is like I always kind of wonder like what the hell they actually need this for as a weapon, and then when Predator comes into the mix and it's finally clicked that this is the same world, I'm like, oh, they need it against the Predators. But I was never too sure because I vaguely remember in the first film there is like a hint that this isn't the first alien that they've met, that there's other things out there, which I've always been fascinated by as well. Like clearly there's other shit that they've seen or
Yeah,
dealt with.
man. Yeah, we're on the same wavelength. There's
All
stuff
right.
I can't talk about, but you will be seeing these things dealt with. There were in Prometheus.
Yeah.
Um, you know,
Prometheus hints at some stuff too.
yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. In the first film, they clearly know there's an alien out there already.
Right.
So we learn why in Prometheus and Covenant, and presumably if there were the third movie, then we would get the answer. But you kind of don't want to, you don't want to spell out like the xenomorph is so much more effective when it's just this unknowable evil thing that's
Mm-hmm.
out there, like
It's the
just waiting
boogeyman.
to stick our head up. If you show here's where the xenomorph came from, and it actually ultimately came from us, that's kind of a letdown in a way. Like it loses its mysterious, you know, loses its gravitas,
Yeah.
unless you replace it with something even more ancient and unknowable. And to me, that unknowable thing that those movies introduce, though, is the black goo. Like that's like this thing that they use to make it. Without that, not like the xenomorphs don't exist. So what other ways? We've seen the black goo express itself in so many other crazy ways in that first film. Like it's a weapon of mass destruction. We've seen it turn the worms into that thing. It
Mm-hmm.
changes those two guys in the cave. There's different ways. Like it's this amazing, like this fire, hence the name Prometheus. It's this fire that creates life, but also destroys. And how else could that have been expressed throughout the universe? Did the engineers make it, or did they just find it? Like, to me, that's this big question that I would love to explore.
That sounds really cool. All right, I'm psyched for this. I'm really psyched for this. I love Alien. I love Aliens. Like two of my favorite films. Pretty much that entire property is like a favorite of mine. Even the latter stuff, which was much more B movie, and that's being nice. It's the level of it.
Yeah.
All right, so on to DC. So all right, you start off with Last God. It was kind of the last hurrah of Vertigo, the beginning of DC Black Label. I mean, it came out at this really weird time. Um, let's start with that because like DC isn't super known for indie comics. Like that's not like creator owned comics is not its thing. That's what Vertigo was sort of it was for them. And even their Black Label, they haven't been doing a lot of that. They've done some imprints with Bendis, and Johns was supposed to have an imprint. So it's interesting is like how did Last God get to DC?
It began life. It was conceived as a Vertigo title,
Yeah.
and it was going to be a Vertigo book. And then that direction sort of changed within the company. They wanted more you know, they wanted DC to be DC, and it sort of became Black Label. And Black Label, as we know, is now kind of a thing for out of continuity, edgy takes on their superhero properties. But not just that. Like you said, they have the Bendis stuff. Is Bendis technically a Black Label imprint or no?
No, his Wonder Comics is the
right.
He's been doing some great stuff, but that's like what Naomi was under Wonder Comics. Amethyst is under Wonder Comics. I don't think Legion of Superheroes is, but I might be wrong.
No, certainly not. It's excuse me, Joe Hill stuff though.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it's technically Black Label, but it's definitely of that type.
It's both, which is fascinating. That's the thing that like Joe Hill's got his Hill House comics, which were also Black Label. I had both on it, which I thought was really, really fascinating.
It was kind of a type with the Joe Hill stuff. Because like, we actually, there was like a horror panel at New York, like that year that I was on with Joe Hill. And it was mostly about Joe Hill's stuff, but Last God was in there too. And that was just kind of showing them where we were going with Black Label. So that's kind of the idea. The fact that they didn't kill, I don't think they killed any titles when they announced Black Label. They just moved mine over there. Like they finished up what they were doing with Vertigo, and and Last God is the one that they changed to a Black Label title. But it's still a creator-owned book. And it's the potential for world building is such in that it could become this Black Label series that would continue. That's the hope. I think it's probably going to. I'd love to do more chapters of it, and I think it's pretty likely that we'll do more.
The cool thing with the world building is, I mean, you've stepped out from the comics. You also released the source book that you could use for role playing games, which is such a great idea. You know, when it comes to that, like, are you thinking of more doing stuff like that? Like, it really does have a lot of potential. I know there's such a business and space for doing just source material for role-playing systems. Like, you don't need a system. It's just, you know, here's so-and-so for Pathfinder, for Savage Worlds, for 5th edition, you know, go nuts with it. Like, is that stuff that you've been thinking through to do maybe more of?
Maybe. I haven't been thinking too much more about the gaming system at this point. I mean, I love that stuff. I'm not nearly as legit as far as creating game systems as my editor. Amadeo Torturo is like a huge D&D guy. Like when he's not doing comics, he's doing that. He loves that stuff.
Is that where the source book came from like his idea?
Yep. That was 100% his idea. And that being said, like it was because he knew how much back matter there. I mean, I've got like gigs of just like Microsoft Word documents. Like
I know you, and I can imagine. Yes.
So much stuff. And like that's why we have back matter in every issue. Like there's just because it was just sitting there. Like I had like entire songs that weren't even going to see daylight and like languages. And I've got glossaries of like hundreds of words for all these different languages, and very few of those words are actually making it into the book. And they were like, do you want to just put more stuff in the back? And I'm like, yeah, dude, that'd be amazing. So so you get these like, you know, pieces of epic poetry and like sacred hymns and, you know, songs written in their notation and all this crazy stuff. And there's so much of it, and Amadeo's mind was just running with all the things we can do with it. It's like, hey, let's put out a source book where people could game with it. And it didn't take that much. I mean, well, okay, I should not say that. The source book took a lot of work, but all the raw information about the creatures and the region and all that was already there. We just kind of had it prettied up for people to read it. We brought in Dan Telfer, a big D&D guy, to make the actual mechanics, like figure out how to make these classes playable, how to make the different, you know, races, you know, applicable to all these different things, like the monster list, and giving them all stats, basically. Like Telfer was the one that did most of that. Well, I mean, actually, Amadeo was probably did just as much. He was very involved in it.
Interesting, really interesting. Yeah, I'm fascinated by that. It's like, you know, it's a fantasy series and fits so well into that space. Like, it just feels like a natural extension to it, and something like fairly can be done. Like, yeah, obviously not easily, but like, you need someone that knows the rules and all that, and that's pretty much what you got to plug in, right?
That was the idea. I mean, it's when we when I first did this, when I first was conceiving of the story, I didn't want to use the classic races at all, like the elves and and dwarves and all that had been so done. I was like, let's just go start completely over. And Amadeo was like, you know what? That's really cool, but I think it'd be great. Like, as a gamer himself and somebody who just loves fantasy stuff, he wanted something to like latch onto to make it feel somewhat familiar. And so we do still have original races and monsters and things, a lot of them actually, but we still have something very much like the elves. We have something like the dwarves. They're different. Like the dwarves they look like dwarves essentially, but their skin is more like stone, and culturally they're completely different. Like they're like, practically feral. They're very unpleasant, and their background and all that is what makes them, it really sets them apart. And we see women, which we don't really see in some of the more, stereotypical stories. The elves are, primarily they're different because of cultural stuff too. Their skin is like golden, but instead of being shiny and immortal and perfect and happy, they're like this subjugated aboriginal race. And it's a very different kind of relationship with humanity than we're used to seeing in stories. And they have control over magic where humans don't, which leads to the creation of the Guild Eldritch and this all. Anyway, I'm going down that rabbit hole. But we also have like the Ursulon, the big beast that Queen Science rides, and the monster list in the source book is very deep, and some of those are based on basic tropes, but some of them are completely new. And it was really important to me to have stuff that's not just the same old shit. Like I didn't want it to be just yet another take on Tolkien.
Let's not just skin whatever's already been done and rename some things here and there.
Yeah.
Call it a day.
Making that decision, the fact that we had new but quasi-familiar takes on elves and dwarves and things like that made it much more approachable for something like the source book, which lends itself very easily into 5th edition.
So I'm going to guess that the big news is so DC's Dark Knight's Death Metal is ending in, I think, early January is like the final issue. I think like January 6th or something like that. Mm-hmm. And that launches then into DC Future State, which is kind of like I'm calling it a transition. I think it's like a nice transition for 2 months. It teases out what might happen in the future. And then in March, DC comes back in kind of their regular continuity, even though DC Future State is still continuity, but kind of gets back to like the stuff you would expect. So starting off with I'm going to go guess that, you've got, I think, two projects under DC Future State. There's the War of the Superman, or probably blanking out the title, and then I think there was another Superman thing, right?
There's Superman Worlds of War.
That's it. Sorry.
And then House of L.
House of L. That's the other one. So I'm going to go off on a limb and say the work on The Last God helped springboard into the Future State. Like how did you come on that? And the other is, the big announcement this week was that you will be hopping on Superman and Action Comics come March. Like, what did you know that doing the Future State stuff?
Let me think. Yes, I think I was tagged to do the Superman things at the same time that I was tagged to do Superman Ongoing, I believe. I'm trying to remember the whole sequence. I mean, at one point I was going to be very involved in 5G. There's going to be like this kind of a cosmic line of stuff coming out of 5G. And I was very involved in that, very involved in it. And we had some really big ideas for that. There were some fundamental, say what you will about 5G. There were some very, very creative things coming out of that that would have been really insane. Some like in very positive ways, but also just in like world-breaking ways. And eventually, there was a course correction. We ended up not doing it. But there were still so many great creators doing such amazing things that we wanted to do still in some capacity. That's not to say that we, to borrow your word, reskinned it. We did not just recycle those ideas. We try to find ways to do some of the cooler ideas more organically, and not just blow everything up and just start again. We try to find organic ways to use some of the ideas that made the most sense. And some of them are still very huge creative things. I cannot wait to see them on shelves, but bringing them out more as their time came and not just all at once. Everything's different. And I mean, personally, I think some of that stuff would have got drowned out if everything was if it was like a New 52 revamp where everything was suddenly completely different. A lot of really great books might have been missed, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, so I got the sense on the outside, like I got the sense that the future state seemed to be kind of a reworked 5G. Like there was some stuff probably 5G that went into future state. Some of it's new, but it also seems a bit more, as you said, more organic and kind of flowing into what was and what will be.
Yeah, my stuff did not. The things I'm doing that I'm doing for future state did not come out of 5G ideas, but. What should I say here? It's so coming out of death metal, you know about the whole revamp, like the whole introduction of the new multiverse, right? It's kind of a different take on multiple. Now everything
Yeah,
is,
it's been pretty out there. Like it's not I don't think that's a state secret on anything.
Yeah, it's just a new. I mean, I'm not involved. Honestly, I don't have any state secrets in that particular aspect. Like it seems like there's just this new creative time coming where everything is possible, where it's the multiverse is now reimagined as this thing where you can just do anything, and you have to worry so much about every little detail. And I think everyone is just really creatively pumped right now. Like everyone is just it just feels really great over there right now creatively. I mean, I know there's been like with all the job news and all that, with people like losing their jobs, it's obviously, it's not great, but it's not affecting our output as far as creativity. And some of these creators that are doing things right now at DC are just doing their absolute best work I've ever seen in a Big Two book. And Future State is sort of an expression of that creativity that's coming out of that now. Like it was 2 months where we can show how far the DC universe can go. We show stuff that's coming up, something that could happen in just a few years, something that could happen in 30 years, something that happens in 1,000 years, something that happens at the literal end of time. We're showing stuff from all of those time frames. And it's just incredibly exciting. So Future State is sort of just an expression of that new creativity. That's basically what it is. It's not exactly just a revamp of 5G, because in my case, it has nothing to do with what we were doing with 5G. It's like not the same at all.
Is the 5G thing you're doing, did it involve Superman?
Not directly, no.
Okay.
No, it was just sort of they came to me like, we've got this guy who's willing to spend 10 times too much time on world building, who's willing to just like create actual worlds that basically exist. Like, so how can we use that? So they came to me and like, let's make him the cosmic guy. So I was doing these cosmic things, and then that all changed. But now I had these ideas that I wanted that would apply to Superman and very well. I mean, it's very different ideas, but on a just huge epic scale. Like I wanted to tell a Superman story that is the most epic we've ever seen him. Something that's on a bigger scale than anything we've seen since The Death in Life,
It's interesting with Future State, and I'm also thinking of the films itself. It seems like DC is getting there very quickly. We're in anything's on the table attitude, like everything's on the table attitude.
Yeah.
Where, yeah, Batman the animated series is canon. Batman with Keaton's canon, with Val Kilmer, Clooney, like they're all canon. Adam West is canon. Reeves is canon. George Reeves is canon. Like it's all on the table. It's all good. They've established that for film. They're now doing that with comics. It just took them a little bit longer because you got to pivot with comics. It just seems like everything is finally kind of aligning where it's just there's going to be continuity, but at the same time, like, go nuts.
Exactly. Future State is the go nuts event. That's what we've been doing. DC has embraced the multiverse in an even bigger way than before, where it's not. There's always been like these rules, and there still are kind of, but it's just this incredible time of creativity where you can just do whatever you want, and it's been just amazing to see what people come up with. I mean, I've got ideas in my own head that I could not have gotten away with before. Where now it's like when they in the first Metal event, when Scott introduced the Dark Multiverse and all these like evil Justice League of Batman, that was really a cool moment where I was like, God, what other Batmen are out there? And I started thinking about, what if I had one of those? Like if I could make up my own, evil Batman, which one would it be? And I have a very clear idea of what I would do. I mean, not just one. There's like, you can do the same thing with any character.
Yeah.
Let's see. I want to see all these different iterations of Spectre, like different versions of Constantine that could happen, and Deadman, and I mean, God, Swamp Thing. I mean, you can do so much cool stuff, and now we just sort of can. I mean, it's really this amazing time where the multiverse is just sort of the big game.
I mean, it's interesting is that, the big complaint you hear about comics is that, there's almost too much continuity. People don't know where to start. Doing the it's all on the table omniverse kind of breaks you of that, right? Like, you're able to just do it, like, hey, pick up an arc, enjoy the arc. You don't have to worry about the continuity as much, and just enjoy the story.
Those are the best stories. Like, I mean, people, whenever you hear about which, I want to see the best Batman story ever. I mean, the one that always comes to mind is Dark Knight Returns. Is that continuity? I mean, I would argue no. But
technically, yes now.
Yeah, now, sure. I mean, Court of Owls, like, it's, Killing Joke. Do you like this origin of Joker has sort of, like, the Red Hood take on Joker's origin has sort of become the one that's, like, quote unquote true, which I kind of hate. I don't hate that version. I hate that Joker has, like, an origin. I mean, it's still cagey enough that you can take and leave what you don't want. I really liked Lovers and Madmen. I thought that was kind of a fun take. And they completely do not jive with each other. It's just a whole nother take that's out there. I can just basically, it's a book that I would just loan someone, like, here's a take on Batman and Joker that I think is really cool. The Damned thing that Az did. There's all these different takes, and they don't rely on each other at all. Yeah. So now we get to really kind of embrace that.
So Superman, we kind of talked about this a little bit when the announcement happened. The thing that I find fascinating is, like, you recently wrote Captain America for Marvel, for the Empire in the miniseries. I always thought Superman and Captain America have very similar personalities to each other. Like, they're both what I would consider that Boy Scout embodiment of good, doing what's right. Like, even if it's not necessarily the best thing to do, like, hey, I should just kill the villain right here. Like, I'm not going to do that. That's not the morals I stand for. Like, that's those type of characters for me. I mean, for you as a writer, like, how do you see similar ways of approaching the two of them? Like, they both feel like the embodiment of American ideals in many ways, of what we want to aspire to, as far as, like, morality and all that.
Honestly, no. And I mean, there's obvious similarities, but in the way I personally portray them, and I had such a short run on Captain America, I'm not sure how much of this came across, because they gave me very specific parameters for that book. They were like, we've got 3 issues. There's this event with plant aliens. Cap is going to be, gathering all human troops together from all these different countries into one fighting force to fight them, while the Avengers and X-Men and everyone else is doing their own thing. Go nuts. They've got, like, 3 issues, so it was super fun and really an honor to be a part of this big crossover event that I've never done. I've never done a crossover event before. It was a huge honor. It's to write Cap, especially as an active duty soldier. I don't know that anyone's ever written Cap active duty before. So it was like this huge thing. But it was a very specific parameter. It wasn't just like, we want to hear your take on Cap. It was like, we have a very specific job that we need done on Cap. Yeah. And so I did that job. With Superman, it's much more open-ended. And they were like, what's your take on Superman? If you were to see my take on Cap, here's the take that you would see. He is not just the aspirational embodiment of hope that Superman is. He is a soldier first. And the soldier has to kind of do the hard thing. Like, if you visualize Superman as like the aspirational look into the sky, the clear-eyed look into the sky with a slight grin on his face, Cap kind of has the stern, like, let's get this done kind of a look. Like, join me and let's do the hard thing kind of a look. And he's of a time, he's of a bygone era too. Mm-hmm. Like, he is a guy who grew up in the 20s and 30s. And the perfect man, the perfect American now, we'll say man, given the time, perfect person back then is not necessarily the perfect person now. I would love to give him kind of a dated approach. Like, I think that when not just in this dialogue, but in his whole outlook, I want to see him on a computer kind of struggling. And I want to see him as just explore him as a man out of time, you know, a man that doesn't really belong here and isn't really comfortable here. I would like to explore that more with him. I would like to explore, like, when he talks, I want his dialogue to be kind of stilted in kind of a hokey, old-fashioned sort of way.
You don't see that too often, right? Like
Right.
they kind of danced around that in the movie a little bit, where he's like, "Oh, I got that reference," and that was kind of the hint of like, "Hey,
Yeah,
he's a
that was
man out
kind
of
of cute.
time." But like,
Yeah, I like that.
there was some different, there was definitely different dialogue and ways, things that were said back then that aren't now. Like, I'm with you on that. Like, he seems very comfortable in today's world where he really shouldn't be.
Yeah. At one point, I was playing around with an idea, a concept I wanted to do for a creator-owned book that was about a character named, I think they called him Achilles or something, but it was like a very Captain America type figure. His costume was even more like World War II era. And it was going to be, what if Captain America really woke up modern day, the perfect soldier from the 30s? He'd be, you know, kind of racist.
I was about to say it'd be slightly racist.
kind
Yeah,
of a kind of a bigot. He'd be kind of sexist. He'd be a
yeah,
smoker. He would not kind of not be okay with LGBTQ at all. It would be uncomfortable for him.
yeah.
Even if he was the perfect American then, that's not now. I obviously I mean, that was just kind of an idea in the back of my head that never really got expressed. And I would never make Captain America racist. Like, it's not. I would never take it nearly to that degree.
But think about our grandparents. Our grandparents say things, and you're just like,
Yeah, right.
you can't say that now.
Yeah, I mean, I want him to be better than that. I mean, Captain America is and should be better than that. But he is a soldier first, and he's of an old bygone era. And so in that way, the soldier, we kind of dance around the idea that Cap has surely killed people.
Oh
I
yeah,
mean, he's a soldier in World War II. I mean, if you're not killing anyone, what are you doing? I mean, he's fighting Nazis constantly, and they're all
yeah.
shooting at him and everyone else. So soldiers, I mean, that's kind of the gig. So I do portray him and Superman very differently. Like Superman, there's like a hard rule: you don't kill ever, and he's got so much power he doesn't really have to. So I do see them very differently, I guess.
How's your run play off of Bendis' stuff? Like, he's obviously been with the character for quite a while. There were some major changes with that. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not asking if you're like just completely rejecting that or going for like. I got to imagine it's being handed off in some ways, right?
Yeah, I'm not breaking anything that Bendis did. Like
Because the other thing we don't know with DC Future State, like, we know it goes into the future, tells this possible story, and then brings us back to the present. Like, we don't know, as readers and fans, like, we don't necessarily know, is it the same present that we are, aware of now?
Sure.
Like,
No, you're right.
it's DC. Like, after DC Dark Metal, Death Metal, like, things could be slightly tweaked, right? Like,
Right.
oh
Yeah, I'm not. I'm. Excuse me. I'm treating all of Bendis' stuff as still being there. So I mean, he made some big changes, and I don't feel like I can. I just don't feel right. Like, just completely breaking all that and starting again. Bendis took some big swings, made some big changes to the status quo, and I feel like just suddenly undoing it all would be hugely disrespectful to him, but also to the character and to all the readers who went along for that whole ride. I think it's important to build on that. So that's what we're doing. And honestly, I don't have a huge problem with him being outed as Clark Kent. The fact that this character is built on the concept of truth and justice, I guess I'm okay with the idea of him telling the world the truth finally. That sort of makes sense to me. I understand it's a huge change.
yeah,
Um,
controversial change for a lot of fans.
for sure. Yeah, I mean, at the time, it was the biggest of deals. Anyway, I don't feel the need to change it. And I also, the thing that most people seem to be really pissed about is aging up of John.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I totally get that. I mean, I loved Super Sons. I love seeing Superman as the father of a young child. It was just, as a dad of a young child, it was like the best, to see that. But Super Sons is coming back. That digital series is coming out. It's still there. I feel like there will be a lot more Super Sons coming out because of how beloved that series is. And honestly, I still want to see John with Damian, despite the age difference. Despite everything going on with Damian now, I kind of want to see that again. So I feel like there's still going to be opportunities to do really cool things with those two guys. But that aside, there's also really cool opportunities to see John as an adult.
Yeah.
And I hate to I'm not going to get too deep into details, but I will say Bendis went to great lengths to really humanize Superman.
Mhm.
Showed him and his supporting cast and how they'll play off of each other, and made you see kind of his inner workings in his head and how what kind of person he is. I think that's really awesome. In my run, we're going to be exploring the super side of the name. We're going to be seeing him. I feel like all the humanization that Bendis did in his run kind of frees me up to go the other way and make the most epic version of Superman I can imagine. And that's what I've done. Like, so in this coming year, for a while, it's going to be build up to this giant epic that I'm doing. That is the most epic thing that I've seen in Superman comics in like a generation or more. Like, I'm so excited to get this out there. I can't explain it. And it definitely builds and everything that's been done up to now, including Bendis's run. But it also makes Superman's world so much bigger. Like, it's going to be, we're adding a whole, like, I mean, I got hired for world building, and that's what I'm doing. So we're going to see DC Universe get a lot bigger and older and newer. And I wish I could tell you everything I had coming, but it's so exciting.
With it, so there was announced that you're going to be working with Phil Hester and Eric Gapstur on Superman and Action Comics to start.
Yeah.
And then it pivots to Scott Godlewski and then Daniel Sampere. Sampere.
Honestly, I haven't talked to him in person yet. I need to talk to him and out loud and find out how to pronounce his name. I've been saying
and then Mikel or Michael, I don't know what it is. Janin.
His name is Mikel Janín.
Janín. Okay. It's I joked with someone else about it. I was like, you hear actors and actresses and you hear their names pronounced all the time. Like, right. No one talks about comic creators and how to pronounce these names. It's kind of out there. Yeah. I'm taking stabs in the dark on that. So obviously you're having rotating or different creator or artists for the beginning part of things. Are you writing to some of the strengths of these artists? Like, everyone has their different style. You're doing with the Jamal Igle is part of the project that was just announced.
Infinite Frontier.
Yeah. As a writer, I think you would want to maybe play to some of the artist's strengths and tweak things a little bit, right?
Yeah, completely. This opening to my run is not going to be like Court of Owls, where it's like, here's the pair, like that's going to be doing this whole thing. It's not like that at all. I am writing. Okay, so Future State, House of L is with Scott Godlewski, Worlds of Wars with Mikel Janín, and then those ends. And then when Action and Superman start, there's a 2-issue crossover where it goes. It's like Superman 29 leads into Action 1029, and those are both Phil Hester. Mm-hmm. That's just a 2-issue arc, and that story's finished. There's going to be a series of a bunch of shorter arcs when I start both series. So that first 2 issues is Phil Hester. Then Superman is going to be several issues of Scott Godlewski, and I'm doing a story with him there. And Daniel Sampere is going to be with me on Action.
Okay.
And I'm not sure the exact issue count for that arc, but that is kind of like this prelude to this gigantic thing that we're doing with Mikel Janín that's going to be coming later in the year. And at that point, I'm not going to be doing both titles forever. Like, I'm kind of funneling both arcs, both titles into the big Action thing that we're doing. And then, yeah, I'm not going to be doing both titles forever, but that's what we're doing right now.
How far out do you have planned?
Oh, God.
Can you talk yourself about? Like, Alien we can't, but like DC's clearly teased out, at least from my reading, like I would say 4 to 6 months worth of work.
It's going to be so much more than that.
No, yeah, it's just one of those is like the initial, just going off the creators and like, all right, so it's 1 month with this. There's a 2-part crossover with this. So that's at least 3 months. And then you got Janín, which would probably be at least another, 2 or 3 or whatever it's going to be. So at least 6 between those artists that they've announced. So at least DC's teased out that you're not just,
The Daniel arc is going to be, my arc with Daniel is going to be longer. And then the one with Mikel is going to be like the real, like the epic thing.
Right. I'm looking forward to this. So what's the thing that's like really surprised you about working on Superman?
What surprised me? That's an interesting question.
Or if there could be nothing that surprised you. Like, I figured there's always got to be like something about a character you're like, I never really thought about this before until I wrote them.
Honestly, nothing yet, but I will say it's been interesting. It's been an interesting challenge writing for different artists. Like I've already written for Mikel, Scott, Phil, and now Scott again on a different arc, and then Daniel. It's been really interesting seeing everyone's strengths. I mean, Phil and Jamal. I mean, actually Jamal as well. We're just getting started on that, but it's been like, for example, okay, Phil Hester is a classic example. So his style is so unique, and it's beautiful. I mean, he's an artist. I love working with him, but it would be doing both of us a disservice and the character a disservice to give him the script that I would have just given anyone. Because I mean, I mean, Daniel and Scott have completely different styles, and Mikel too, obviously, but they're more similar to each other than Phil is to anyone. Like Phil is just very unique, and he worked on the Superman TV show back in the day, and you can kind of see that in the way he portrays the character. You kind of that mask, like the old, 57 Chevy kind of approach to it. And this streamlined version of Superman. And for that reason, I wrote this 2-issue arc entitled The Golden Age that is meant to invoke his classic sensibilities of what Superman looks like. And I really wanted to give a story that's very stylized and different, so that Phil can just crush this book. Phil can do anything. I can give him any kind of script. Any of the scripts I've written for these other guys, Phil can do a great job on. But I want to give him something that's geared towards his specific style. So I wrote one with a very specific kind of like a weird sort of box to put myself in where there's very little dialogue. Like there are captions, and there are text messages, and there are other little creative ways to have text on the screen, but people are speaking very, very infrequently. And it just kind of lets his plus I love seeing his cosmic stuff. Whenever he did this kind of a Kirby inspired piece online that I just thought was so kick-ass. And that piece that he did just sort of inspired everything I did for the Golden Age. I wanted something that really gives him the opportunity to do his best version of Superman without too much clutter. So that's what I did for him. Scott has an incredibly dynamic style where everything looks like it's in motion constantly. Everything looks so fluid and just exciting, and you see all the movement everywhere. I have kind of like this box in my mind of certain artists that are like that just everything's in motion. Like James Herron is one of those. Scott doesn't use speed lines the way that James Herron does, but it's still, everything looks very just fluid. And I keep that in mind. House of L is the most like action-packed, epic, like all these huge 2-page spreads that I gave him. Sometimes there are panels within those 2 pages, but it's very rarely that I gave him a script spread where it was like page, even number, page odd number. It was almost always like, here's the pair of pages, go nuts. And I wanted to go wide and everything that he could, just because that's where he really sings, Same thing with Mikel, but in a different way. So I wouldn't say I've been surprised by anything yet, but the challenge so far has been to make every arc a standalone story that is in itself compelling, that also plays to the strengths of the artist very well.
Is there, obviously it's building to something big, like, a lot of your writing, I think almost all your writing right now has been kind of self-contained stories, right? Like I can't think of anything that you've done like the massive, where you've had to balance here's the 5-issue story arc, but here's the 25-issue arc. Here's the meta story that everything kind of builds towards.
Yeah.
For you as a writer, like how's that challenged you? Because it's got to be different.
It is different. I mean, probably the longest series I think I've written until now is Last God. It was just 12 issues.
Yeah.
And that was like two big arcs under the umbrella of one big story. Coming out of continuity, I mean, even now it doesn't feel like it's not exactly just a baton handoff, because the way that Future State and Death Metal kind of like reset the board. So it does kind of feel like starting from zero again, which is cool. And we're not even thinking about where the arc is going to end up at the end, because it's so far out from now and this huge thing is happening. So right now I'm not having to think about where I'm leaving it in the end. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure how else to explain it. Everything right now, all these little arcs that we're building now are taking baby steps toward the prelude to the big event, and then the prelude leads right up to the actual event, and then it's going to be this. From there, it's just like a rocket ship.
Yeah, I mean, in the announcement, it just said like this is the prelude to DC's massive Superman event, which is funny. When I initially read it, completely over my head, like didn't even think about that sentence. I was like, oh, sweet, he's on. They finally made this announcement. I mean, it's pretty obvious where DC was going once they started teasing out what was coming in March, and it was like, oh wow, this creative team that was on Future State is now on the ongoing. Oh, this creative that was on Future State is on the ongoing, and it was just
Right.
like, well, a few folks that are working on Superman and doing some projects, like which of the team is going to be, which of those teams is going to be on the ongoing. It's just a question of which one. And I was just more of like, hey, who's the which one off of that? So yeah, I totally missed the whole Superman event part. I'm staring at the article about it, and that completely went over my head. So, what's the most exciting thing about writing Superman?
I mean, God, this the whole. I mean, just writing Superman. Like, I mean, the character that I wanted to be as a child. Like it's. I mean, my father figures were Superman and Batman, basically. Like both of them kind of scratch such a different itch. Like, I mean, Batman is that power fantasy of like, I can do anything. I can just, through sheer force of will, I can do anything and be just as awesome as these gods. And Superman is this aspirational thing where I want to be so much more than I am. I just want to be better and save people and just be the best thing ever.
Do you feel pressure based off of that? Like, I gotta imagine, like, knowing that other people look up to Superman that way, like there's got to be some pressure to it.
Kind of, yeah. But I mean, I feel a great responsibility. It doesn't really make me nervous though, because I'm so confident in the story that we're telling. I feel like people are really, I mean, I'm so proud. I can't think of a story I'm more proud of than the Future State I'm doing. I mean, either one of them really. House of L is kind of like a Superman take on the Battle of Camlin, where you're seeing the fall of Camelot potentially. Like you're seeing this big battle where it's all come, like this house that stood 1,000 years is up against this great evil. And it's there's actual in keeping with me doing like way too much work, there's actual like iambic pentameter, like poetry in it, to make it feel like you're reading an old epic poem, and Scott's just crushing that. I'm so proud of that story. And it's kind of like it's just kind of like the coda to the whole Future State event. We're seeing like the end of the House of L far in the future. The thing I'm doing with Mikel is my statement on who Superman is to us and who we should be. It's kind of a love letter to Superman 400, the old anthology issue from way back. Actually, I've got it here.
I think I know the issue you're talking about.
In the 80s. This thing?
Yep.
It's like for those who don't know it, it's an anthology with all these different, like the names on the front are like ridiculous. Terry Austin, Brian Bolland, Ray Bradbury, John Byrne, Howard Chaykin, Jack Davis, Steve Ditko, Will Eisner, Mike Grell, Klaus John. I mean, this just goes on and on and on. Jack fucking Kirby is in here. And a lot of it, they're not all stories. Some of them are just like pinups, but it's all their statement on who Superman is. And they're all image, like every little short story is an image of who, like a snapshot of who Superman could be in the future or will be in the future or portrayed in the future. And so my Future State, my 2 issues of Worlds of War is a love letter to that idea. Like the first issue is humanity's vision of who Superman was. This is after he's already gone, and humanity's take on who Superman was and where he could be now. In the second issue, we see where he actually is, and we see his expression of how he sees us. And I'm super proud of it. To me, it captures that feeling that I get from watching the old 1978 movie of Superman is just his inherent goodness, and the one person who absolute power did not corrupt, and he wields it with such dignity and humility and compassion. I want to capture that. I want everyone to see that version of Superman that I see, and just to feel that way, and just be so inspired and want to just fly and be what he is.
And this actually kind of goes into the next question I had. I've had a lot. So, we're both parents. My daughter's at that point when it's all about superheroes now. 2 years old. I have no idea, but she's running around going, I'm Spider-Man, I'm Batman, and I have no idea where she got it. And I swear to God, it's not me. And she constantly, says superheroes help people. I help people. which is absolutely adorable. And like, to me, I'm like, all right, I'm doing something right as a parent that my kid says this, firefighters help people. Like she's just on that mantra. And it's very much superheroes help people. Batman helps people. Spider-Man helps people. As a parent, like, how does that impact you going toward, doing this? I mean, you just kind of touched by it. Like you're writing about what you feel that we should be aspiring and to, like Superman should aspire us to. But as a parent, how do you approach that? Because like, I know I would be, if I was to write a comic of Superman or Spider-Man or that, like I think approach would be very different now watching her than I would have, 5 years ago when a kid wasn't in my life. Like it clearly has changed my view as to superheroes and how I'm reading comics and approaching them just as a reader.
Yeah. I mean, it's having John Kent in the picture, having Superman's son, Jonathan, in it has made writing Superman almost too easy. Like I relate to him so much now.
Yeah.
And I think for a lot of people, it's hard to kind of wrap their head around how much Superman loves all life, like all humanity. But everyone can kind of understand how much he cares about his son. That's sort of Jonathan sort of it helps everyone kind of make Superman relatable. Yeah, I mean, I love my son in a way that I probably could not have understood before. And it's just this beautiful way to express it now. I've got this way to talk about it in a comic book I write about him all the time, like in a much different way. The Aquaman annual is very much about him too. And a ton of my work is. But now, yeah, I mean, my kid is the biggest Superman fan, like you're talking about. He just lives it, Yeah. And it's important to me that he understands what it is. So like I take him to, this weekend we're going to like a food bank, and like I need him to see like actual, like what it really means. We're not just saving makeup. We're not just saving made up characters. We're not just superheroes saving each other from the bad guys. We're actually helping people that need it. Like real people are out there, and there's real problems right now, and people, like, there's actual villains out there doing terrible things. They might not see themselves that way, but here's what actual bad guys look like, and here's what they do, and here's what heroes look like, and here's what they do. And superheroes are just a really fun way to express that. And I try to marry that up with actual good things that we can do, and also impressive feats too. Like he runs with me for like miles at a time now, and I'm trying to get him to understand the Batman side of the equation too. Like you got to make yourself really awesome, and you got to use your force of will to do great things, and improve yourself to make yourself more capable, but also use the privilege and the money that we have to help other people and to stand up people when they need it. And I've seen him on the playground, literally, like, help a kid who needs it that he doesn't know, like help somebody up or get in a bully's face or whatever. Like it's really awesome. I feel like superheroes are doing that,
Did he, does he know that you're writing Superman?
Yeah.
What was the reaction?
Oh my God. He's so into it. He's like, really? It's been like this steady build, like seeing my career come along has been really cool for him. He, before I was writing the superhero characters that he knew, I was writing other comics, and he was excited about that too. He's going to conventions with, no, I guess he went to one convention with me, but usually he'll occasionally go to a signing back when that was the thing. He came with me to Third Eye Comics. He came with me to Midtown, and at Midtown, there was a big poster on the wall of like Marvel Zombies, I think. And he saw it, and he could read my name, which is almost his name, and he pointed to it, and he kind of tugged on some rando's sleeve, and he was like, my dad made that. And then sometimes he'll go into a shop and he'll pick up a random comic that looks cool. He'll see a cover he likes. He'll be like, did you make this? And I was like, no. I'd be like, it was like, let's put it back, like, lame. But he's super proud of it, and he knows what I do. He knows that he sees that people know me in the shop, and he helps me workshop characters. I mean, not often do I use something that we do in play, but we'll play superheroes all the time. Like while we're running, we're making up these stories about what's happening. And we'll play, superhero Legos and stuff too. And we're making up stories, and he's driving a lot of the storytelling himself. And I can see him becoming a better storyteller himself through the vehicle of superheroes. And it's been just an incredibly good time. He's the most fun kid to parent ever, most of the time.
Yeah, I'm getting back into that storytelling with the 2-year-old running around because she's at that point where she's attempting to tell stories, and it's a hell of a lot of fun. It's a hell of a lot of fun.
Sure.
I'm shocked how much I'm enjoying it.
It's
I've held you for a long time.
He's told me stories that are, I've definitely paid money for shittier stories, and he tells me sometimes.
Her right now is monsters. Everything's monsters. There's a monster over there. There's a monster over here. I have a tiny monster in my hand.
Nice.
Again, it's another thing. No idea where she gets it from, and I'm just rolling with it. And it's not a bad thing at all. It's just always like, oh, there's a monster in the corner. I'm like, oh, it's a mean monster. It's a big monster. Oh, it's a mean monster. Well, we need to go take care of the mean monster. I very quickly turned it into Ghostbusters. Okay, let's go grab and zap the monster and make it go away. Like, she loves it, and it's nice. Fun. It's really fun. So yeah, it's interesting. It's like, it's a lot. I mean, you know my wife, and like, we just had a conversation about that when I told her about you writing Superman. She's like, oh, it's gotta be really cool with his son to take on this character, because like, we both know your son's into superheroes and Batman and Superman and all that. It's like, that's entertaining, but at the same time we got a discussion of like how both of us have changed that view of looking at those properties because of our daughter. It's because we're seeing things through her eyes in many ways, because she really has just instilled that basic of Spider-Man helps people, Batman helps people, they're superheroes, and it's just like, oh yeah, no, yeah, that's yes it is. And then looking at those properties of like, what does instill that, watching the cartoons or putting that stuff on, is like, what can she watch that she would get that sense from them, that Spider-Man helps people, Superman helps people.
Yeah, he's not the target audience I'm writing for now. Like I want him to be able to read my stuff and see the same basic things that I saw in that movie. I mean, the movie came out the year I was born, the 1978 Christopher Reeve film. So I saw it, probably on TV a few years later, I guess. I don't really know, that on VHS or whatever. But it made such a huge impact on me. Even then, I could just tell what being a superhero meant, from seeing that film. And I knew that I wanted to be that too. And I want him to get that same reaction, even though there's going to be plot things and dialogue things happening that are above his head. I still want him to get that same picture of Superman, of who Superman is, and that he's got absolute power, but he uses it with absolute humility and compassion for everyone, even his enemies. Like, it's important that he get that even from stories that are technically too old for him.
Yeah, no, I'm trying to think, like, when you just said it, like, yeah, I was born in 79. I'm like, wow, when was the first time I watched the Superman film? And it had to been like probably on regular TV. I would think it was like, probably they showed it on NBC or something like that back in the day, and I caught it then, would be my guess. But yeah, I mean, to me, that's a film that still impacts me today. Like, they always had that line, if you'll believe a man could fly, like, yeah, yes, you can believe a man could fly. Like, it did it.
Yeah, and it made you want to. I can't remember when I have no idea when I saw it in the theater for the first time, but seeing the credits like fly over you and the big whoosh sound, you see the S shield come in the screen. It's just like right when it's like and the trumpets are soaring, and it's just like the biggest deal, and like you just felt so powerful. That's that feeling that I'm trying to capture in every issue. Like in every issue, I'm like, where's the moment? Where's the moment where you give them the chills and they kind of like, they flex and they're like, I want to be this, like I really want that to be in every issue somewhere. So that's what we're trying to do.
Nice. Very nice. I'm psyched for this. I'm really excited for it. Thankfully we don't have too much longer. At least we get the first taste of what you're going to bring to Superman in January. Before we wrap up, I've had you for quite a while. Are there any other projects you can even talk about? I'm sure between Alien, Superman, you're fairly busy at this time, but anything else?
I'm busy. I do have one more big project coming that I cannot talk about yet.
Is it from one of the major publishers, or like an indie thing? Okay.
Well, I can say there's nothing I'm doing. I am also doing a kid's book, actually. I can talk about that because nobody's attached to that yet.
Yeah. What's kid's book?
It's called Arlo and the Moon Dragon. And it's a story that's inspired by my son, and it's about him. He's in it. His name is not Arlo, but it's clearly based on him. And it's about a kid who loses his mom and goes to find the moon dragon to help him get her back. It's really, really fun. It's, again, there's world building in it, kind of. It's not as much work to read. It's It's set in a place called the Belt, although I don't think the name is actually in the book anymore. It's just sort of, there's you see little bits of earth everywhere, and there's like you'll see a river flow through. It's not inland. It's just like through space. Basically, the whole thing kind of happens in space. And he has to find his way to the moon, where the moon dragon lives.
Book or comic?
Book.
Okay.
Picture book. It's meant for a kid my son's age.
Well, so what I'm hearing is I will have a book to purchase to read to my daughter, hopefully soon.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah, but it should. I mean, I have no idea when it'll get picked up. The art is great. The art is by Dustin Malik, who's he's actually my colorist on Smoketown, and he's got a really beautiful, illustrated style that he does with his own stuff. Very kind of like along the veins of Scotty Young, kind of.
Nice.
Yeah, it's beautiful work, and it suits us very well. His color is like off the chain beautiful, and yeah, very proud of it. So we're just now trying to get agented and getting it picked up someplace. So hopefully in another year or two, it'll be out there.
Awesome. Looking forward to that. Cross my fingers on that.
Thank you.
Because that just sounds awesome. I'm looking for good stuff to read her. So anything else?
Not yet. Not until the next big announcement.
So, all right, cool. I'm super excited about this. I really appreciate you talking. So yeah, I mean, I'm sure we will talk more when Superman actually drops an alien.
Yeah,
So.
it's always good to see you, brother. I'm glad to see you, in the circumstances, and hopefully we'll get to see each other in person soon.
I was about to say, hopefully that we can do this in person, because that's what we've always wanted to do, is in person, and then shit hit the fan.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it'd be fun to go over there and like go through long boxes and stuff.
Jesus, you have no idea. I mean, this is just a tease of the games. This is 12 feet by 6 feet.
Jesus. Okay.
That's the board games. That's not even the comics.
Nice. I look forward to seeing them.
All right. Well, I'll talk to you later. Much appreciated. Looking forward to the releases.
Thank you, brother. Bye.
Yeah, bye.
Hey, thanks for watching the previous video from Graphic Policy Television. Just by watching, you help support our site. Thank you so much. Now, if you're watching these videos, you probably care about geeky things like movies, television, comic books, toys, games, video games, you name it. You can go and subscribe right now to our YouTube channel to stay in touch and catch all the new videos, or check out our website at graphicpolicy.com. There's a nice link on this end of the video. But as always, thank you for watching. Keep on rocking and keep it geeky.